you're basically a successful international entrepreneur, not just a normal entrepreneur. We're all over here working to be successful in the United States. You've actually now have been able to be successful in the United States and internationally. Hi, I'm Dana White, founder and host of One Real Story, the podcast and book series, where we provide entrepreneurs with practical advice through the voices of successful entrepreneurs. If you're a veteran, aspiring, or an established entrepreneur, this show is for you. As always, I'm coming to you live from the Voice Hub production studio in Indy Atlantic, Florida. Our special guest today is the founder of Phenomenal Ventures based in Berlin, Germany. He has spent time in the United States Army and has a background in commercial real estate transactions and business development. Industry peers call him the sustainablepreneur for his insatiable drive to ensure every project is financially and environmentally sustainable and a long-lasting business relationship is secured. He has successfully executed business development and financing projects in the United States, the United Kingdom, Costa Rica, New Zealand, Italy, France, Spain, and a bunch more international projects I can't even name. He is now focused on mixed-use development projects that fuel visitor experiences and increasing the value and add of investor portfolios. He is the expert that finds financing for commercial real estate transactions. My brother, friend, successful entrepreneur, Carl D. White. What's going on, Carl?
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. That was, it's nice to be reminded of some of the things you've done. So I appreciate that.
No worries. No worries. Look, I'm still getting into the groove of things here. So this is why it's called One Real Story. It's authentic, right? So, and then speaking of authenticity, right? That's how you go. That's how you go it. But we have a little bit of history. So our history goes back, about only 10 years as my brother.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yeah,
right.
That is right.
Brothers from another mother. That's how we call it. So
how true is that? Yeah.
How do you feel to have an extra brother in the gang right now?
Well, let's put it like this. I feel like half the world knows about Dana because of how much I tell them about the things that you're doing and all the things that you're trying to achieve. So, I mean, for me, it's a positive because of how much positive energy you're putting out there with what you're trying to achieve.
Touche. I talk about you all the time, so it's vice versa. I never knew I had a brother out there that would think like me, because I'm the only child from my mom, and then we have the same dad. But that's a good thing, though, right? Good people, good vibes, good blood.
Yeah,
this is how we go into things here. So I'm glad to have you on the show today. And just to get started, you have an interesting background, right? And
right.
Some people may not just get it. So if you can you just explain for the audience what you do on another level?
Understood. So with my international connections to family offices, investment funds, private banks, and ultra high net worth individuals, people come to me, and I use my network to first, I need to analyze their projects to make sure it would be interesting for my connections. And then once I've done financial analysis, then I reach out to my connections who could be interested in financing the project. So in super simple layman's terms, I'm very good at analyzing and also providing financing for suitable projects.
That sounds pretty big deal, huh? You've done some big things. All right. So now on top of that, you were in the Army, right?
I was. I went into the Army right after high school, meaning I graduated in June. In July, I was in basic training at Fort Jackson.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So now that's an interesting background because you could have a long, uh, great career in the military in the United States Army. So now you're an entrepreneur, a successful one. What made you do the transition?
That's a very good question. To be honest, it wasn't something I didn't want to leave the U.S. Army when I did. It was I went in as a legal specialist. It was at the time, maybe the MOS has changed. It was 71 Delta, so I was a legal specialist. So my background is legal, and at the time, this was in the early 90s. It was the RIF, the Reduction in Forces, and so I had originally signed up for a 6-year term, and after 2 years, they came to me and they said, "Look, some people, someone has to go." Someone has to
Oh,
go.
wow.
You've already more or less got your bachelor's. You've used every program that we have in place. We feel like you would be the best prepared to get your discharge, your honorable discharge, and get the GI Bill. So at the time, I'll be super transparent. I was heartbroken in a way. I was like, your girlfriend broke up with you,
Yeah.
because it wasn't really my decision, but obviously the outcome has been very positive. So who knows? I still might have been in the military to this day, or would have served my 20 years. But that's life. Unexpected things happen, and you got to react.
Absolutely.
So,
And I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, it's been for the better, right? So,
exactly. At the time, I didn't see it that way, but it has been for the better. It has been.
so now, our dad, so
Mhm.
military, Vietnam history,
Yeah.
was
hmm
did that inspire you to join the military? I mean, because he went to
Uh,
Vietnam, so
yeah. Yeah. Yes and no. I had a very simple reason for joining the military. So I was a very good athlete in high school, and I had some Division 1 schools,
runs in the
scouting me,
family, by the
recruiting
way.
me for uh, and
What
I had
sport?
a serious injury. Yeah,
What sport?
for football,
Football.
for football, and I had a very serious injury, and so they backed off, and the only schools that were available were very small schools in Iowa, in Idaho. And I didn't feel like I was ready to, interesting enough, again, maybe the injury again was a positive. I didn't feel like I was mature enough because when I graduated from high school, I was 17. Most people are
Oh
18,
yeah.
19. So I felt like the military, and it wasn't just my father, it's my family, or our family has a history, cousins and, whoever have, we have this long history of being in the military. So I thought, okay, it's something our family has always done. And at the same time, it sounds like a cliche, but it turned me into a man. I really had to learn a lot of skills that I didn't have as a 17-year-old when I left as a 19-year-old. So for me, it was okay. I want to grow up. I don't want to have to depend on, my family or my mother to, provide me anything if I went to school, 1,000 miles away. So I thought this is the perfect. I could learn a skill, and at the same time, serve my country, and then leave as an individual that I could say I was proud to. Where I learned these things was from the U.S. Army. So that for me was what pushed me to join the Army.
Awesome. Awesome. So that basically tells you what skills you taken from the military that has
Exactly.
made you who you are today.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I would say, because, obviously I'm a veteran as well.
hmm
So being in the military, did that open you up, being from where we're from, St. Petersburg, Florida, right?
hmm
And a small city, to pretty much like there is more out there. Did that open you up or
It
lay the
did.
seed?
It did. And I mean, for me, it was as you said, small town. And so I went to Fort Jackson, and I was a 17-year-old, and my bunkmate was a 37-year-old former police chief from Kentucky, some small doohickey town in Kentucky. This man had 3 kids. He had lived a life, and I was just so
Wow.
I was meeting all these different people, and it made me realize there is more to life than my little section of St. Petersburg, Florida. And it opened up my mind, and it affected what I did after the military. I could have gone back to St. Petersburg and gone to St. Pete Junior College, which is a good school. But because of all the people I met, I thought bigger. I thought, wow, there's so much more out there. And that's what I did. I took advantage of what was presented to me in the military.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty
Mm.
awesome. So now, this is one thing that I do brag about you. Everywhere I go, I say, the past 10 years, I have a brother now, so I can brag about somebody else other than myself every now and then. So you speak 4 different languages. I'm
I
always
do.
amazed at that. I'm still trying to learn Spanish completely. I took 2 years in high school, and now I'm still trying to get it to this day.
Yeah.
So what languages are those?
So I live in Berlin. So obviously one of them is German. So I speak German and Spanish because I lived in two Spanish speaking countries in Costa Rica and Spain, and Italian, which is the last language because I lived in Italy. I did a lot of work, and I love Italians. I love Italy, but if you don't speak Italian, you're not doing business in Italy. So yeah, so those are the 4 languages I speak: German, Spanish, Italian, and then of course English.
That's pretty awesome. I'm pretty
Mm.
impressed. So that means you can do business in all of those countries and speak the language
I
for the
do,
most part.
I do, I do. And so when people ask me why did I learn those languages, it was a necessity. I had to. I realized in Germany they will always look at me as an outsider unless I could communicate in the same in Spanish, same in Italian. So that is what drove me to was necessity. I took 2 years in high school Spanish. I took 2 years in university. I couldn't even ask where the bathroom was. I went to Costa Rica and the owner of a bank said, "Hey, I need help with this deal, but it's between two Spanish speaking parties." I learned Spanish in 2 weeks, 2 weeks to be able to close that deal. I went to a school. I did 8 hours of Spanish a day, and then I moved in with a Spanish speaking family. And so I was getting Spanish 20 after two. I mean, was it bad? Of course, I wasn't going to be winning any prizes, but
Right.
I closed that deal, after 2 weeks of Spanish. So it was necessity. I had no choice.
Wow. Wow.
Mm.
An incredible story. Like
Mm.
there you go. Drive and grit, right?
Yeah,
Adapt and overcome. Now,
exactly.
as you're even doing those types of things, you didn't have any plans to come back. It was just more about, hey, let me just learn this and just live in for the moment.
That's a very good question. I would say for me, I always believed that I would come back to the US. I always believed, even to this day, I believed I would come back to the US. And and there's a very good possibility I will. It was just the opportunities that kept presenting themselves ended up taking me to different lands. So Costa Rica was the first place I lived when I left the US. And then I said, okay, I'm coming back to the US. And then I got an opportunity to go to London. I didn't plan on it. It just happened. And it was always these things. I would meet somebody. I met somebody in London who told me about a work situation in New Zealand. So the next thing I knew, I was living in New Zealand. So it was always something that just kept coming. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the US. But it just never, and not in a bad way. I do a lot of business in the US. I travel to the US all the time. Obviously, not right now with the whole Corona situation. But so, I mean, I'm 100%, U.S. citizen, American. At the same time, yes, it does change you a little bit working abroad, but it wasn't planned. It definitely wasn't planned to be, out of the U.S. this as many years as I have been.
Well, that just leads me to my next question. As in, you're basically a successful international entrepreneur, not just a normal entrepreneur. We're all over here working to be successful in the United States. You've actually now have been able to be successful in the United States and internationally. Can you
Mm.
tell me a little bit about that?
I can. So from my side, I can say this, and it might sound biased, and it's one of those things where if you can succeed in the US, you really have a great foundation to be successful anyplace else. I really believe that.
Just learn a few
At the
more
same,
languages.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we just have this, whether you want to call it hustle mentality or entrepreneurial mentality, we really have it in the US. The one thing I had to learn on the international perspective is sometimes how we do things in the US is counterproductive to how business is done in other countries. So from my side, being an international entrepreneur, that international part for me is synonymous with being someone who shuts up, listens, and observes. Whereas in the US, we tend to be more or less act, let's push, take no prisoners. I got to act first. Whereas in Europe and New Zealand and other countries, it was different. I had to learn the hard way. I could tell you a lot of failures I've had in these different countries as well. But I had to learn to be quiet, listen, observe, educate myself, which could mean learning the language or learning the local laws or business culture, and then putting my plan into action.
That's pretty deep. I mean, that's very clear, right?
Right.
You definitely have to listen and be willing to accept your failures and to be able to overcome them, because I've had my failures as well. But I think that a part of the drive and a part of that, your journey, your personal journey, your failures are meant for you to learn from your mistakes.
Exactly. I completely agree. You're 100% right on that.
And that pushes you a little bit more. We look at and see everyone having these fabulous stories, and we look at the ball player that's a millionaire, that's NBA, NFL, and hockey, baseball. Well, they've worked hard, right?
Yes.
They had to work through injuries to even be where they are. So those are some great points in an international platform. So what tips and strategies would you give an aspiring entrepreneur wanting to work internationally? I mean, I know that's a whole chapter in itself, but
yeah. I would say the first thing that you have to do is, we spoke about this before this call. We are both introverts. And if you are going to be on the international stage, you have got to break out of that shell. You have got to force yourself to, whether you hear somebody speaking English and you're in the middle of Vietnam somewhere and you go speak to them, hey, what are you doing here? How long have you been here? How have you been able to stay this long? Introverts, that's hard for us to do, but that's what I had to force myself to do when I was traveling. So that's one thing, is you have got to be willing to get out of your comfort zone. And if you're trying to learn the local language, you don't have to. I live in Berlin. I'm not doing business in Berlin, so it's different. You don't need to. The English is the lingua franca for business, so that's clear. But I'm doing local projects in Germany. I did local projects in Italy, local projects in Spain. But you got to be willing to look foolish sometimes. Really quick story. I was trying to explain to a potential German partner about a project. But I was saying, look, the way this project works, it's a logistics project. We need to do it at night because at nighttime, there will be less traffic on the road, on this interstate. And the word for night in German sounds the same as naked. So I kept saying, we need to do it naked. We need to do it at naked time. And this dude was just looking at me. He was looking at me like I was crazy, and he got it that, okay, this is a guy from the US who doesn't really speak the language. And finally, he just started laughing. He says, laughing in my face. So obviously I took it as, well, he thinks my idea is horrible. And, he can't even be professional enough to, right. So you got to be willing to look foolish. You have to. The last point I would say is, it's connected to what I said before with educate. How we do business in the US. I mean, we can see it, how people do business in New York is not the same as how business is done in Miami or San Francisco. So magnify that by a factor of 100 going to other countries. You have got to educate yourself to local customs, to local laws, to local rules. Germany has very specific rules on how you can finance projects, who can finance projects. And it was almost like getting a second law degree, learning. So I would always be in compliance with these things. And these are just not things we have to worry about in US. So it's the education part. So breaking out of your shell, definitely, I would say, not being afraid to look foolish, and then really educating yourself, whether it's the language, local compliance laws, any of those things, you have got to put in the work. got to, if you want to, not just do business in the U.S.
And that's basically, in business terms, is globalization, right? If you
Yes.
have for
Mm-hmm.
example, you have Starbucks, nothing against Starbucks. This is what I read in college, right? And
Mm-hmm.
don't quote me, but it was basically where they wanted to go to India. And we tried to take our US ways and put the same menu up there.
Mm-hmm.
And, even though
Exactly.
India is a little bit westernized, but they weren't fully adapting to our culture. So they were basically failing. They were just
Exactly. Yeah.
spewing money, right? But it wasn't until they actually learned the culture and understood that teas were what they were interested. And so they
Mm-hmm.
adjusted their menu and they just blew up. Now, and that goes for just even as a person, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
and based on what you're saying, and if you want to go international, you need to learn the lay of the land, learn the
Exactly. And
culture.
local partners. Maybe that's another thing I would add to that is it's very good to find a local partner. And it doesn't have to be a business partner per se. It could just be a local person of contact who can, again, educate you on those local customs, rules, laws. It could even be unwritten rules that you don't realize are stopping you from, business. Another short anecdote in Spain. In the Spanish do not like to look like they don't know what's going on, that they're unsure. When I say Spanish, I don't mean Costa Rica, I don't mean Panama, I mean people in Spain. So me being the
Spain.
US citizen, the American, I was always trying to push them, push them to come to a decision. Hey, come on, time is money. That's not how they do business. They like to, you pitch, they listen, and then they'll come back to you 3 weeks later when they've gone through every single point of your presentation, all the numbers, so they can come back and look like they know it just as well as you. I needed a local person to tell me, Carl, relax, calm down. We're not in the US, we're in Spain. So that person helped me out a lot. They saved me a lot of time, a lot of money, because I would have been just pouring money into presentations and, getting all of this financial stuff in place and lawyers and everything. And because of them, I said, you know what? Okay. And so then I would say I had a very successful time in Spain, and purely because of this. And I always let them know we're still in contact. I still let them know. And it's been about 15 years since I've been in Spain. It definitely having a local person
Wow.
really does help.
Some great information. You almost should go into being an international business consultant. Something to think about.
I've thought about it. I've thought about it. There's some other things that I would like to do before that happens. I'm not there yet. But you planted that seed. You put a little bit more soil on that idea. So
Nice. I'm sure you heard it a few times already.
no.
So now, speaking of education and educating yourself, right, as you get ready to
Mm,
transition into international business, how do
mm.
you feel about the necessity of college?
This is a very good question. You know, there were a lot of positives to me going to university. I went to Northeastern University in Boston, and for my bachelor's, and I really have positive views, I really look back fondly on my time at Northeastern. Now, 90% of the reason why is Northeastern, whether it still is today, I don't know, but it was a cooperative education university. So that means you would go to school for a semester and then you needed to work for a semester.
Okay.
So bachelor's took 5 years instead of 4 years. So I got hands on real time learning to back up the theoretical I was getting in the classroom. That was invaluable. Really, it was the best experience. So I had this work ethic I got from the military. Then I was getting the theoretical, and then I was going out the next semester applying it. And I learned very quickly that what I thought I wanted to be, once I really got into the I thought I wanted to be into politics, public policy and all of this. And I, did some work with the local Boston Equal Opportunity Commission and how things on the political. I hated it. I hated it. It just wasn't for me. And so I think it saved me a lot of misery. So that was great. At the same time, after my bachelor's, I went to Stanford. And I have a lot of positive things to say about Stanford. However, that bill you have when you leave Stanford, that's the part where I feel like maybe if I was, hindsight is 2020, experience is always, in my opinion, a better is better than initials after your name. BA, BS, JD. Unless you're going to be an engineer or a doctor, experience, in my opinion, is a much better. You know, it's a much better teacher. So would I have still gone to get a higher degree after a bachelor's? As I said, now with how expensive school is and me being in the international world, maybe at 2021, I might have just immediately started traveling, immediately went to other countries.
Right.
So I would say it depends. I wouldn't want someone to listen to this who's in their second year of school to say I'm dropping out because I heard Carl White speak about he doesn't believe. It depends. I met a lot of interesting people. I made a lot of interesting connections. However, at the same time, maybe me going to a very well-known real estate, company and knocking on the door and say, "Hey, please, can I be an intern?" It would have done me better. So I
So,
think it depends on the person.
and I'll just have to add to that, right? So, um, I went to technical school, right? So I
Mm,
always wanted to be an architect growing up, knew it ever since I was like 8, right?
mm,
So I actually finished the program in high school, and I didn't have the best upbringing, and from the hood neighborhood,
mm.
we and from the South, right? Even though
Right,
they say
right.
Florida is not the South, well, guess what? Florida still is the South, right? We have a hodgepodge of South Carolina, Geechees, and all that good
Yeah,
stuff, right?
exactly. Yeah, you're right.
So we have a certain dialect.
Mm-hmm.
Play ball high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what kind of helped me stay on top of my grades. So I wasn't the best straight A student in that manner, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
knew I needed an education. I knew I needed to finish high
Right.
school. And then when I went to technical school, maybe about 60 days, 30, 60 days out of graduating, right? Due to my circumstances, it was a better choice to go. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
going into NBA, so I had to fall back on my backup plan, right? Too
Right.
short,
Mm-hmm.
5'9", 3/4. And so I started going to this technical school and I started working pretty early. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually went for mechanical. So the practical knowledge that I actually received was more valuable than actually a university at that particular time. Granted,
Exactly.
it was very
Yeah.
expensive, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until where I determined that I needed to go to college to get better, well rounded. What is
Mm-hmm.
art appreciation? What is sociology? What is psychology? So,
Right.
in those
Mm-hmm.
terms, to be able to have an intelligent conversation with someone.
Right.
So, that's
Mm-hmm.
what actually turned my motivation to college to actually help make me more of a well rounded person.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. And it's those people you meet in those courses. You said sociology or those things. One of my sociology courses, there was a girl from Turkey whose father was one of the biggest, businessmen in Turkey. So her view on the world, like you said, where we are, and my view of Turkish people was they all look like, dark skin, dark hair. She had red hair, super fair skin, green eyes, and so that just destroyed my image of what I thought people. And then I'm thinking it's a third world country, and she driving, Mercedes, S class. She had two of them, while we taking, the Boston,
Yeah.
subway, scraping up money to get a metro pass, for the month. You're right, so it's not just those courses, it's the people you meet that make you well, and you are right. As I said, the advanced degrees, I think for certain people, yes, you do need those. Maybe we need to take in England, they have this very interesting concept. They call it the gap year. When you finish high school, you travel. They push you to get out
Uh,
of England and travel. So you will meet a lot of 19, 20-year-old English people in Costa Rica when I was there. New Zealand when I was there, Italy. Maybe that's something we need to think about in the US to say, hey, you know what? You finish high school or you finish your bachelor's, get out of the US, go to Canada, go to Mexico,
Yeah.
go somewhere else for a while, get a more world or global view, as you said, earlier, and see how what that does for you when you get back to the US.
And you bring a great point. You bring up a great
Mhm.
point. Because I can say based on the military, I have 15 years of engineering experience, but then I joined the military late. And then so um, it wasn't until I joined the military that I felt cultured, and just a
Yeah.
little bit. Like I've been to, Africa, some places I can't talk about, Afghanistan, then Italy, right? Going through those
Mm-hmm.
places in Spain. The little times that I spent there, it opens your eyes to different
It
cultures,
really does.
you
It
know.
really does. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not to talk about, when you go to the Caribbean islands, that kind of, and then when you go to
Mhm.
Alabama, it feels like you're in another country there too. So at times, not like it's like
Yeah,
another
and the
country.
language.
The
Sometimes I
the
feel like
dialect,
Alabama, they speak their own language too. So, I understand. Yeah.
right? So now with your friend from Turkey, I'm pretty sure she owned about like her parents owned like 4 homes or something like that, 2 homes,
Shopping malls. They
right?
own entire shopping malls.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
So that just brings me to this next question is like, how do you feel owning real estate in business is important? How do you feel how important that is, and then why?
Mm. That's a very interesting question. So one of my mentors here in Berlin is a very successful Israeli. He's lived in Berlin about 35, 40 years, but he's from Israel, and he really pushed me to be better. And he said, yes, you have all of these tech companies, and it's very interesting stuff. And now he's trying to diversify and get more into tech and startups. But the thing is, he said to me once, he said, the average life or the average span of time a company is on, the New York Stock Exchange is about 40 years. And when you look at it, Microsoft is getting close to that, is getting close to that. Facebook obviously hasn't been around and then they just die. Innovation or, whatever, but real estate is always there. It's always there. And so for me, I feel like you look at the history of wealth in a lot of countries, it is from people owning land, whether it's the US in the 1700s, whether it's England, with their, aristocracy, it was always owning land. So if we take it on the microeconomic level, I'm all about passive income right now. How can I make money even if yesterday I just got back from Greece. So I was in Greece, trying to escape this Berlin weather as long as I can. And, my thing is, if I'm laying out on the beach in Greece, how can I make money so I don't need to stress about me being away from work? And that's what real estate allows you to do. Now, there are other things people could do. I just know real estate. So maybe someone who's an engineer can tell me about something else, or someone who's a accountant can tell you something different. But for me, it's the foundation, in my opinion, the foundation for wealth. And at the other time, it's the foundation for passive income. If you buy six, apartments in a building, and you invest a bit of money, and then you're making, 12, 13, 14,000 a month of, passive income.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love the fact that you asked me about real estate because I don't know so much about stocks. Do I, dabble in the stock market? Yes, but it's very, very little, not enough where I can say, hey, I'm on my way to being the next Warren Buffett. It's just not going to happen because I don't have the knowledge and I probably don't have the cojones that Warren Buffett does. First sign of trouble, give me my money, give me my money.
I don't know, Carl.
But
You learned Spanish in 2 weeks, so
yeah,
to close a deal.
yeah.
So
But real estate, it's yeah. So from my perspective, it's very important, especially we are minorities,
yeah,
and there are a lot of reasons why minorities, Black Americans don't own land or own real estate. a lot of historical reasons. And, that's an entirely different conversation. However, we still need to try, we still need to fight to try to rectify that and start to own land or own property. So
But
that's the way I see it when it
those
comes
are the
to that.
facts, right? You can't
Yeah,
deny
yeah,
your culture, right? We adopt
yeah,
other cultures. We can't
right.
deny our own and accept it
Exactly,
and inspire our own,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
But we inspire all in the
Hmm.
same process because every culture has its disadvantages and
Hmm.
you know some
Exactly,
things they have, adversities they're faced with.
exactly. You're right. Hmm.
So that brings me. So work. What are your overall experiences working overseas as a minority? Do you think some of them held you back, helped you? Is it
Mm.
different from being a Black American versus being an African American over? I mean, not African American, but an African overseas, or from another.
Oh, these are great questions, Dana. These are very good questions. So, we spoke about that. This is about our story. So my story is my story. I don't want anyone to think that this is how it is. So the first time that I really felt that we, as Black Americans, African Americans, we talk about Black being beautiful and Black is all these. The first time I realized that that was true was in Costa Rica. And it's interesting, it's because of their history. They brought in a lot of Jamaicans in the 50s to build their railroad system. And as a result, with the globalization of the world, people who speak English always have a leg up on those who don't. So in the 90s and the 2000s, when I was there in the early 2000s, Jamaicans had, they had integrated and they were 100% by that time Costa Ricans, but they still spoke English at home. So they were the managers. They were the ones who were starting businesses that were doing, import export in the US.
Yeah,
So when I went to Costa Rica, everyone just assumed, oh, he's the boss. Whereas in the US,
it's
as we
different.
know, we've heard these stories, it can be different. You can own the hotel and they treat you like, you sometimes should be in the back taking out the trash. That's just how it can be, not how it always is, but that's how it can be in the US. So that was
Right.
my experience in Costa Rica. And versus being, you know, Black American versus being African, there is a difference, especially in Europe. 100%. The moment you and I, we can look at someone and say, okay, he's African. Whereas in Europe, they have access to less. They don't know. You're just grouped. You're
We're
just
all the
grouped
same,
together, and
right?
there's nothing. And it's not a negative thing. It's hey, I needed to live here 20 years before I could figure out, oh, he's Spanish and he's German just by the look.
Right.
So when they find out I'm American, there is a certain level of respect and uh, yeah, and kind of, I don't want to use the word honor, but honor, especially in Berlin, they still have a really big appreciation for what the US did, especially West Berlin, what we did for West Berlin during the Cold War. And it really opened up a lot of doors for me. It really did. Were there countries where it was quite difficult? Spain. Now, to preface that, in case there's any Spaniards listening to this, Spain has improved a lot. It's one of my most favorite countries. It's a great country. I was there 2004 to 2006. And my story is it was one of the most racist countries that I've ever lived in my entire life. And I've been to Alabama, I've been to Mississippi. And at that time, Madrid had nothing. It was terrible. And some kind of way, I still was able to persevere, but it was work. It was work.
Right.
Again, I preface that by saying now, 2020, completely different. It's very open. It's very what happened in that time. That's a different story. But there was it was what I the success I had in Spain. I felt like it would have been doubled if I would have gone now. So I would say, like in any place, there are going to be positives and negatives that people are going to project onto you. In Germany, it was a positive that I was American, more so than the negatives of being, African American. In other countries, as I said, Costa Rica, out of 100 things, maybe there was one that was negative and the 99 were positive. So it's just how you handle yourself. I'll be the first one to say, I'm not one of these people that it's fantasy where they say, oh, if you just work hard, yes, working hard is, but at the same time, yeah, Northern Italy was special. They also have some issues with people of a certain color. So it was interesting. But I worked with the company. So to be very honest, I worked with a company in Italy that sent me to Italy. So I had the name of the company, and that opened the doors for me. And then how I handled my business, how I made them money. Then they said, "Oh, we don't care what color this guy is. He makes us money. So we like black people now if they make us money like Carl."
Yeah.
So that was my experience in Northern Italy. So it just depends. It really does depend. I definitely had my frustrated days where I was like, I just want to go back to the U.S. Uh, you know, and
And
it was color specific, and sometimes it was U.S. specific in France. They were like, "Oh, we hate the Americans because of Iran and Iraq, and what you oh no, it was real. It was real.
right.
It wasn't because I was black. They just, oh, you're American. We don't like you. We don't like what Bush is doing. We don't like your policies." In point. What can you do? What can you do?
Well, I mean, you adapt and overcome, and
Exactly.
you make a way, right? And
Yeah.
you learn the
Mm,
culture, you learn their ways, and you work within the parameters
mm,
that you are
yeah.
given, and you work the
There you go.
opportunities and increase your
Yeah.
network, right?
There,
Because
there
just
you go.
like
That's what it is.
right, because anywhere you go, you have people that are for you and have people that are against you, right? It doesn't
Exactly.
matter what color, shade, dialect.
Yeah.
Your ears could be spaced out wrong or bigger or too small. Or,
Right.
I mean, people
Exactly.
are going to be
Eyes too close
prejudiced,
together, too far apart. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
I mean, I could kind of relate in regards to the engineering world. I was a minority coming in at the bottom. As a
Mm,
as a drafter, as a CAD designer, right? But before you know it, you work hard. I went into that business at an early age, at like around 18, 19. And
wow.
I immediately was like, I want to own my own business one day. And I wanted to
Hmm.
own my own engineering. So I went in and dressed for the job that I wanted, not for the job that I had. And I
There you
paid
go.
attention to everything that was taking place on every level, right?
Hmm.
So before you know it, years to come, I was basically designing the plans. So it
There you go.
transitioned to land development and
Hmm.
designing the plans. And the engineer was literally like, "Oh, good, Dana. All right, stamp,
Hmm.
go to the county," right?
You're right.
But being a minority in there, you are always I felt like it wasn't the full respect was given, like, oh, well, you don't necessarily have your engineering degree, so you're
Hmm.
not as smart as us. But however, I had the most important job. I'm the one that's
Right.
finalizing the plans that not finalizing, but doing all the intricacies of the plans
Right.
in order
Hmm.
to um limit millions of dollars of mistakes before it went to
Right.
construction,
Hmm.
you know?
I, I understand. I
So,
understand. It is a real thing. One thing I just want to add, that we are, and maybe it's in our NDA. One of the things I said with my mentor, I will say his name. I'm not sure if he will be okay because he's very low key. He's close to 70 now. He's retired. He's living the life. That's where I'm trying to get to his level. So his name is Schafstein. So Schafstein Group is the group I work for here in Berlin. As I said, him and his son really, they taught me a lot. And one of the things he said to me, and I feel like you have the same, is he said, "Carl, your superpower isn't that you can analyze real estate deals. Your superpower isn't that you have this ability to, convince county officials to give you this planning. Your superpower is that people like you. You make people feel safe." And I feel, Dana, you have the same superpower, and that helps.
yeah,
That really helps where people want to work with us. People want to do business with us. I think entrepreneurs underestimate that. They underestimate that if you are a good person, if you treat people with respect, it will come back 1,000-fold instead of trying to be, we hear these stories of people yelling and screaming and cheating this person and cheating that person.
Yeah,
I disagree. I disagree with that. You gotta be nice. You gotta treat people as how you would want to be treated, and it comes back to you. It really does.
absolutely. Protect yourself. So one of those things are that in business that I always keep with me is people don't do business unless they know, like, and trust you.
Yep. There you go.
That's the easy deal. Easy way to go.
Yeah.
No, like, and trust.
All right, you're right.
Focus on those. So, Carl, what are some of the current projects that you're working on?
Well, at the moment, I have 3 projects that are pending, meaning they are right now they're ready to go. Interestingly enough, Berlin doesn't have a food hall. So there's a gap in the market. They have what's called a market hall where you go buy your fresh vegetables, your fresh fish, but nothing where we have in the US where you go and you have all these different stalls where you buy your finished food, you have your bar. Nothing is like that in Berlin, in a city that gets 12 million visitors a year. Yes, we're in Corona time, but I feel like now is the perfect time to innovate. So I have a project where we are constructing in a historical protected hall the first food hall in Berlin called Food Garden. So that's the project we have right now. The second project is also Berlin-based. It's another American. He lives in Berlin, and we met through a mutual friend. And we're building a ice hockey rink in Berlin, where all of the ice hockey rinks are over almost 50 years old. So when I say ice hockey rink, we're taking it to that next level like we do in the US, where you have, the nice restaurants, where the public likes to go, but you have the practice facilities for all the teams. So that's what we're doing in Berlin. And with the same partner, funny enough, Dublin, Ireland has the same issue. All of their ice hockey or figure skating or speed skating participants have to practice in Canada or Norway or the US. So with the Irish government, we've teamed up, and we're going to be building a multi-use sports facility, ice sports facility in Dublin. So those are the 3 big projects where, we've already signed, everything is moving forward. Long-term projects, one I'm really proud about is in Colombia. I'm working with a family, and we're going to be building 90,000 affordable housing units. 90,000. So this project we're talking about this is a 20-year project. This is not something that, you build 1,000, 2,000 here, then you got to build a school, then you got to build a grocery store. So I'm really, that project I closed in 2019, so last year, but it's just a process. It's a process. So that's more something that's in the background, but the other 3 projects, Food Garden, Berlin Ice, and Dublin Ice, are projects that I'm working on right now that we're ready to move forward on.
Wow. That is phenomenal. Phenomenal, literally.
Yeah,
so
it is.
Look, as always, you have a legacy that you're creating that we greatly appreciate in the family and as a friend, as a mentor, because older brother. I'm fortunate to have you in my life and on the show, One Real Story. So can you tell everyone where to find you? Where can they reach out to you?
Yes. So obviously that's a good question. I am on LinkedIn, the traditional places, LinkedIn, those things, Carl D. White, you will see me. There's also my website. It's www.fventuresberlin.com. And then, as I said, on my website, you'll see the other projects that I have. I have a list of all my projects, all of my financial partners. So people want to, I understand, when someone says, hey, we need 500 million for a project, and I say, hey, not a problem, I can do it. They want to know who is behind you. So there's a list of all my financing partners, the list of the projects. So that's where people can find me, LinkedIn, or as I said, www.fventures with venturesberlin.com.
Awesome. And everyone be able to find your contact information on our website as well, onerealstory.com. So to our listeners, thank you for your time today. Let us know what you think and our show, and stay tuned because there's more to come with our book series and episodes. If you have any questions or would like to continue to be inspired, you can always find us on onerealstory.com. Thanks again, Carl.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
All righty.